Welcome to Napa Valley Grape Growers Fridays in the Vineyard. I am Victoria Coleman, winemaker for Lobo Wines, and we are at Lobo's Atlas Peak Vineyard. Let's go take a walk. So up here on Atlas Peak, Lobo's Vineyard is just about under 5 acres planted. The property itself is approximately 42 acres. So they only developed the 5 acres. It was very difficult because it's so rocky. They had to blow out a lot of rocks and move a lot of rocks. So I think they decided that was enough work, just the 5 acres on its own. But we have 4 blocks, vineyard blocks up here. We're growing 4 clones of Cabernet Sauvignon. So we've got 337, 7, clone 4, and clone 169. We are also growing Merlot and Petit Verdot. This block is a replant after the fire in 2017. And so we were able to replant in 2018. I still think we have a couple years to go, another year or so before we see any production. I'm just really excited because I just saw a tiny little cluster. I was thinking, we won't be getting anything from this vineyard, but this is the first little cluster that I've seen. This vineyard, it seems a little vigorous, just a little. It was always shaded by oak trees. We've been able to open up a little bit without removing anything, but it tends to develop. It's like my last pick in the season, but once the flavors come in, it's clone 337. They're very intense flavors. Usually the cluster tends to be a little looser and the berries smaller. But it adds a lot to when I taste them. Now we're producing enough to where I'm able to separate the clones out and taste what they're doing individually. And I feel like this gives a lot of fullness, roundness, richness to the wine. That one was tart, but they're starting to develop flavors already, and there's not as much greenness as I expected. So there's flavor development coming along. Through the Napa College, I was able to get into UC Davis, and so I spent 2 years there, but I began making wine before going into Davis, and I was working for a farming company at that point, and the owner had a client who couldn't sell grapes, and I remember him asking me to make wine for him if I wanted to make wine, and I was like, nope. I don't want to make wine. I'm just going to be in the vineyard. And the following year rolls around, same client couldn't sell his grapes, and he approaches me again, and I thought, okay, it's a different job, so a little more money, and if I can call to Michael Silacci, who had moved on to Opus One, and if I can call him if I need guidance, because at that point I was not, anyone can ferment, but I thought if something goes wrong with this project, someone's investment, I better know what I'm doing, and I better have someone to guide me if I need. So he said, go ahead, go for it. And that was in 2005. And so I remember after the fermentation of that fruit, tasting the wine out of the tank, and it was the place that I was making it was this tiny little vineyard in St. Helena. And I could have failed easily just for the way it was set up, but it made me work harder to protect the wine just by the type of tank it was and just the storage facility altogether. But so it was challenging, but it was fun at the same time. So I was very hands-on. I did everything myself, and I taste the wine and I just thought, oh my God, I have to do this again. And I remember that vintage when we bottled it, and the owner of it gave me 10 cases, and I blew through the 10 cases. There's Melody Fuller, she started the Oakland Wine Festival. I don't think it's in existence in the way that she tried to put it out there initially, but it was nice to get out in front of like an urban community. And Lobo allowed me the opportunity to take the wines to Oakland to the festival for 2 to 3 years. So that I feel like it's not a responsibility, but I just really want to get this wine culture in front of, people like me, from my culture, because they don't, like me, I growing up did not have the exposure to wine. I know that my mother, she was drinking Merlot and Riesling at the time. Washington State, they have a wine community, but I don't know anything about wine even, coming here. So I didn't think into that. And so I have a cousin who is at Fresno State studying now, and his mom, I'm helping her to establish a vineyard in South Carolina. So, and I have a friend, Karen, who we weren't friends. I met her out here in Napa, and she wanted to source bulk wine to start a project, so I helped her to do that with her 2016 vintage. So it's like trying to find a way to involve and include everyone who wants to be included. And I've had just, I don't know if it's not luck, but I've had the opportunity, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be involved with a group that's trying to facilitate a pathway for people of color, Black people in particular, though, to be involved in any aspect of wine world. I'm just thankful for the Brown family of Brown Estate that they were here doing it before I was, and there was also Marbu Mark, who was here as well, that I met over the past years just being around Napa. He's got a history here before my history began. And also there's Dan Johnson, who has started making his wines, and he's been in existence, maybe since 2010, probably his first vintage. But those are people that are doing it from soil to the finish and bottle, and I really admire that, and that's what I aspire to be. Lobo Wines is owned by Randy and Krys Wulff, who've been involved with grape growing since the early 1990s. They purchased their first vineyard in Oak Knoll and a second one not much longer after that. They began growing grapes up here on Atlas Peak in 2006, and their first vintage from the vineyard was 2009. I began with them in 2008, and so that makes this my 13th vintage as their winemaker. So the Atlas Peak wine, it's one of my favorite wines to make, my most favorite to drink of all the wines that are made by Lobo. When I first started working with the vineyard, it was producing flavors like earthier flavors, I guess, if you will. A lot of spice, a lot of black tea. And over the years, the black tea is sometimes expressed florally. And so sometimes it's like I had to find the black tea in that again. It's got a lot of dark fruit, a lot of chocolate comes with that. I feel like the 4 clones of the Cabernet work really well together. You've got, the clone 4 that it's complex, but it's kind of rough around the edges. And the clone 169, it's a softer, more elegant wine. The 337 I mentioned gives like some richness and mid palate, I guess. And clone 7, which has been around, don't want to talk about how long it's been around, but the clone 337, it's been very consistent and also has like richness and texture, but I've tried to blend with them differently and hold out portions, and it just all comes together. So you can't really have one without the other, I believe. It's floral today. Thank you for watching. Please check out Lobo at lobowines.com. I hope that you're able to enjoy a bottle of this wine as much as I do. Hope to see you sometime soon in Napa. Cheers.